Today's objective is to differentiate between elements and attributes in HTML. We have some short writing to do. The video is optional because it's kind of loosely connected to the objective. I want to make that an option, but I still think it's a pretty valuable video. We'll have a discussion on HTML through the reading, and the rest of the day will be used to practice using elements and attributes. So, what's an element? It's usually consisting of a start tag and end tag with the content inserted in between. So here's our example, tag name, and then that's what's going to be displayed on the browser page. So the HTML element is everything from the start tag to the end tag. P stands for paragraph, so everything from here to here, this is the element. HTML elements with no content are called empty elements. Empty elements do not have an end tag, such as the break element. HTML elements can be nested. Elements can contain elements. All HTML documents consist of nested HTML elements. So that word nested just meaning there's elements within elements. You think of a bird nest with an egg within it. That's just what the word means. And in computer programming, you'll have things that are nested sometimes, even functions that are nested inside of other functions. So your think, write, share on this page, I want you to define element, define what an empty element is, and a nested element. So in your notebook, 1, 2, 3, 1 element equals, 2 empty element equals, and 3 nested element equals. What are these three? So now let's move on to attributes. All HTML elements can have attributes. Attributes provide additional information. They're always specified in the start tag, and they usually come in name-value pairs. So you'll have the name and then the value of the attribute. The language is declared with the lang attribute. So this is the example I'm using. Here's the element, the start of the element, HTML. You've seen that before, especially when we went over the skeleton of a web page. But here is an attribute added. It's language as a name, and then the value of language is going to be United States English. Declaring a language is important for accessibility applications, for like screen readers. If you downloaded the Readable app, which takes Wikipedia articles and reads it to you in that robot voice, that's an example. You might have the option of choosing other languages to have it read to you. For people who don't have the greatest eyesight, they can still browse the web. And so having a screen reader is really important to them. So you'll definitely want to add that into your code when you're designing web pages. So your think, write, shares on attributes. What are the attributes in the HTML below? Why is it important to have language declared? HTML images are defined with the img tag, the file name of the source, src, and the size of the image, width and height, are all provided as attributes. So here's my example, starting with the img element. The name of the attribute is src, and the value of it is right here. So this is where the picture, the image you're going to be displaying is located. So the computer knows to use that for the image. And then here's the name of the attribute width with a value of 104 pixels. And then another name of an attribute with the value of 142 pixels. HTML links are defined with the A tag. The link address is specified in the href attribute. Here's another example. So you got A as the element. Here's the name of the attribute. There is the value of the attribute. So this is where the link will be taking us. And then you can add text right here, which will be displayed on the web page. So when the person clicks this, they'll go here. Okay, and then you have your closing tag like usual. So think, write, share. What is the attribute here? And why is linking helpful on a website? Okay, so here's that video I was talking about. Really a good one. I can briefly go over my notes from it here. I found it interesting that the Apollo 11 code is currently on GitHub, so you can see that in its entirety and its complexity. The video talks about the Harvard Mark I, which is an interesting early computer, 500 miles of wire in it. The simulations the computer was doing was for the sake of the Manhattan Project. So that's the building of nuclear bombs in World War II. The relay in the 1940s could flip back and forth 50 times a second. I want you to think about that when we learn about gigahertz and what that means for a computer processor to have 2 gigahertz or 4 gigahertz. The term thermionic valve was used in the video. You have vacuum tubes, which are no longer used, but what they did is they applied a positive charge so electrons could move through the circuit. 1947, transistors replaced these vacuum tubes, and they use a silicon gate. In Unit 4, we'll go over transistors and how to create logic gates from them. Another great term, nanometers, just to keep in the back of your mind. Fairchild Semiconductor employees were the ones who created Intel. And I just put a note down here that in the videos, it's tough to connect this to our HTML topics today of elements and attributes. But I'm going to say that without this history, your ability to tell the computer what to do with these elements and attributes would be impossible. So we're working at a really high level abstraction wise. Eventually you'll learn how the computer is taking your code, taking your directions, and then doing something with it. So with that, in class we'll go ahead and begin the reading. If you're just following along here, the DOL for today: what are 2 differences and 1 similarity between elements and attributes? And number 2, after learning what you've learned today, is HTML programming language? Has your answer changed? Is it the same from a few days ago? And now you definitely want to pause if you don't want to know possible answers to this. But I want to go over those really quickly. So here's what I'd consider an exemplary response to the question number 1. The similarity is they are both part of HTML. Difference is attributes usually come in name-value pairs, unlike in elements, such as the break line. Elements are seen as whole, while attributes are very much just a part. And there's another one. I mean, this is a little lower level answer. Though notice there is more words. I want you to think about that especially for our tests and for the professional world when you're writing emails or writing a message on a commit. Just because you write more doesn't necessarily mean you're more right or you're doing a great job. Being concise is very, very valuable in this type of work.